So hi again. Is this working? I think so. All right, so let's jump straight into it. Imagine you come to a coffee shop and you sit at a table, you take out a sheet of paper and you start writing down what people are ordering. What you're especially interested in is what kind of takeaway coffee they take. And so what this coffee shop is offering is, well, the usual stuff, small, medium, and large coffee takeaway. And after a while, you start noticing that one of the sizes is outperforming the two others by far. Which one do you think it is? Who's for the medium one? All right, so I think you were the first one to say it. So imagine that you're sitting at this table and you somehow cannot understand why the hell is everybody taking the medium size. So you stand up and you get out and talk to the people who took the medium size. And you ask them, so why did you take the medium size? And what is the most usual answer, do you think? Go ahead. Exactly. The small one is too small, the big one is too big, the medium one is just the right size. But what happens if this coffee shop takes away the small one and adds a huge one to the offering? Now you keep on writing down what people are offering, and what do you think, which size is the most popular right now? Again, the medium one, which used to be the large one before. And again, you go to the people and you start asking them, so why did you take the medium one? And what do they say? They say the same answer. The small one is too small, the big one is too big. The medium one is just the right size. And this is exactly what I'm going to talk about. I love this example because it's super easy and it shows us two very important things from my point of view. The first one is that as a business, you shouldn't trust market research if it is done in a usual way. Because what customers tell you, it's just their rationalization of their decisions. But the decisions happen somewhere else. They happen subconsciously. Behavioral economics is studying the subconscious decisions, the shortcuts that we all have in our minds, the shortcuts which govern mainly all our decisions. It turns out research shows that 90 to 95% of purchase decisions happen subconsciously. Now, ask yourself the question, do you actually know how to communicate with the subconscious mind of your customers? Or do you usually just state all your benefits and you lower the price if you want to get more people to buy it? Because if you do so, you're only communicating with the rational part of their minds. I give you a better deal and more of you will take it. But do the math. Only 5 to 10% of decisions happen rationally. The huge rest happens subconsciously. So before I go on, I want to tell you a short story of a book which totally changed my life. And this happened, I was counting yesterday evening, I think 7 or 8 years ago. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a behavioral economist, I'm a mathematician. I used to do actuarial mathematics, so insurance mathematics. And at the time I was studying in Copenhagen in Denmark, and I had always been interested in business, entrepreneurship, management, and I was reading a lot, and one day I stumbled across this book, Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. Have you ever heard of Mr. Ariely? Yeah? He's the most famous behavioral economist in the world. I mean, he's doing fascinating research, and all of you urge you, get the book, go through it. It's mind-blowing. It might change your life as well. And so I was living in this tiny stinky room with a mattress on the ground and the refrigerator in the corner and the stove on top of the refrigerator. And you can see me sitting on this mattress. Everything was smelling like scrambled eggs. And I was reading the book and being all fascinated by it. And from that moment on, I kept falling asleep and waking up with the idea of one day I have to do consulting or applying these behavioral insights into real business. One day I want to do the research, I want to do the experiments, I want to do the applications that Mr. Ariely is doing. I would love to collaborate with this guy. And remember this dream, because we'll come back to it in like 15 minutes. So from that moment on, I basically spent all my free time studying about behavioral economics. I finished my studies. I got a job as an actuary in Vienna, actually. And it took another 3 years of commuting from Bratislava, where I live, to Vienna, studying and reading about behavioral economics, until the day where when I decided to actually quit my job and found a company. And I founded Mindworks Behavioral Consulting. So I had this idea, I want to do consulting for businesses. But you can imagine that no one wanted to do business with me. Because, well, I had no clients, I had no references, and at the time, basically no one knew about behavioral economics. So me and my co-founder, we started talking about the subject, we started writing articles about it, and slowly it caught up. And the turning point was in 2017 when we got some first corporations to work with us. And nowadays we're very lucky to be collaborating with some of the biggest banks, insurance companies, telco operators in the CEE region. But let's get back to behavioral economics. And to illustrate the point about behavioral economics, I give you the first case study that we did for Taxify. Actually, Taxify is a predecessor of Bolt. And so they came to us and they asked us, could you maybe help us redesign our Facebook ads so that we get more people clicking on them and registering as drivers? So we did it. And the only thing we changed was a couple of words right in the middle of the picture. How would you use an extra 750 euros a month? And this is obviously not beautiful copywriting, because we don't do beautiful copywriting. We do effective interventions. So to give you the numbers, just changing the sentence on the picture resulted in an increase of click-through rates by, I think it was 57%. But the interesting part is, why the hell did it work? What is the underlying principle? And the underlying principle is something called the Endowment Effect. Now forget for a second about Facebook, and let's get to a different setup. Say you want to buy a new TV. So you go to the store, you're standing there in front of 15 different TVs, and the salesperson comes to you. And he asks you the usual question, how can I help you? And you give the usual answer, I'm just looking. Now, what if the salesperson came and asked you something different? What if she came and asked you, so what will you be watching most often on the TV? And now you start telling a story. You know, in 3 weeks, it's the Champions League final. I'm so looking forward to bringing all my friends in, and we'll have beers, and we'll have a great evening, and I just hope that Tottenham wins. And suddenly, as you start telling the story, you start building an emotional connection with the idea. And suddenly, you don't want to give it up. And just by changing these few words, the salesperson increases his chances that you will actually buy something. And the same happened here. As the person started answering the question, because if you get a question, well, you start answering it in your mind. And so they started picturing, so how would I use these 750 euros a month? And they didn't want to give up the idea that they just pictured. So behavioral economics is a science about what drives perceptions, decisions, and behaviors. The important thing is science, because what we do is that we apply science into practice. We bring the scientific knowledge into business. We don't do bullshit. we do research and scientific insights applied into practice. And it gives us the tools to predict and, most importantly, influence customers' decisions. Now I'll give you another example of how a tiny change in communication increased conversions by 128%. This was a job posting website, and they came to us and asked us if we'd be able to help them. Well, first of all, I'll tell you the business model that they had. So they have all these jobs, and basically they get compensated whenever someone sends a CV through their website and the company hires this person. So obviously, the more CVs people send, the higher the chance that they will get the compensation. So our task was to increase the number of people who sent in the CV. So we thought, okay, a piece of cake. We'll just change the job ads, how companies describe the positions. But they said, no, sorry, I mean, you cannot touch those because the companies are in charge of the job ads themselves. You can only work with the website. Okay, so we thought, what should we do? So we dug into research. So we did an extensive research of different studies done in the field of basically human resources recruiting and the job seeking and so on and so on. And we combined that with all that we know about behavioral sciences, about consumer psychology, and we came up with a couple of ideas. And one of the ideas, well, we tested them all. And one of the ideas which worked basically like magic was something that you very well know from, for example, Booking.com, Amazon, and all the other websites. When you're buying something, they tell you how many people have already bought the same product, how many people are looking at this room. I mean, it's a coincidence that always you have like 20 people looking at the same room that you want to book on Booking.com. But if you think about it for a second, the setup of looking for a job is totally different. Because if you're looking for a job, and I tell you that already 50 people applied for the job, well, your chances go down. So logically, the more people apply, the lower the chance that I will get the job. But at the same time, behavioral economics tells us that, especially in situations of uncertainty, which looking for a new job definitely is, we tend to be influenced by what others did in a similar situation. So we convinced them to test just telling people how many CVs other people had already sent before them. And it turned out that just adding this little feature, this tiny feature, increased the conversions by 128%. Why? Because we understood what is the context, what is the situation in which the candidates or the potential candidates are, that they are in a situation of uncertainty, and we chose the one tool which is very well suited for these kind of situations, which is called social proof. These two interventions that we did, I mean, it looks kind of simple. It's just changing a few words. It's just adding one or two pieces of information. But it's just the tip of the iceberg. And before we actually come up with the solutions, there is something we call behavioral audit. It can last for months. And during the behavioral audit, we try to get in the minds of customers. We try to understand them. What are their motivations? What are their, actually much more importantly than motivations, what are their fears, their uncertainties, which are going through? What are their current habits? How are they interacting with your product? Because if you don't understand that, you can never ever design good solutions. And how we do it? Well, we observe them. We conduct interviews. We conduct focus groups. We look at the data. And so this is the first phase of our project's behavioral audit. After the behavioral audit, you have a rather nice picture of what's going on in their minds. And then if you combine this knowledge with the insights from behavioral sciences, you can come up with beautiful solutions which are quite easy to implement, which don't cost a lot of money, and which can work like magic. But these insights are not only applicable in marketing and sales. We do actually a lot of projects in HR, improving the recruiting process of companies. Because, I mean, you know it, nowadays getting a good person into a company is quite a big deal. So you're not choosing anymore, but the candidates are usually choosing which company they want to go into. So it's so much more important to have the entire recruiting process well optimized. And so what we do is that we help them from designing the content of their job ads to the recruiting interview. What should you ask? What should be the individual steps of the recruiting process? And we did exactly for one of our clients. The whole project took a year. We were observing the recruiters at interviews. We talked to them. We interviewed the candidates who got the job. We interviewed those who refused to come to the company. And we came up with a whole new structure of the recruiting interview. And it was filled with all kinds of behavioral insights. But my favorite, the one that stood out, is something that we call the principle of reciprocity. The principle of reciprocity is very, very basic. If I do something for you, you'll have the tendency to reciprocate. But so how do you do that in the setup of a job interview? Well, the way a usual interview looks like is that me as a candidate, I come into a room and they start asking questions and more questions and more questions. Then they say a few words about the position, maybe the company, and well, that's basically it. We told them, what if we reversed it? So before you start asking questions, present yourself. Who are you? So that the person feels more safe. And we exactly told them how they should present themselves. That they should disclose something personal. Just like I did at the beginning. Remember my tiny room in Copenhagen which smelled like scrambled eggs. I try to tell you something personal from my life. And so we instructed them to do so, and it worked like magic. The feedbacks were, this is incredible. The candidates are suddenly so much more open. And the entire atmosphere of the interview is so different. And well, they rolled it out to dozens of their branches, and it was a very successful project. I want to ask you, do we have the results? I mean, not all of you, because you were not here from the beginning of this block, but some of you did a small experiment. And now I want to show you the results. So I asked you two questions, and we divided you into two groups. One's on the right side, the one's on the left side. And we asked you basically two questions. The first one was, how much would you be willing, how much maximum you would pay for these three items: wireless keyboard, hand blender, winter leather gloves. And you both got the same question. Which ones were blue? You guys or you guys? Blue. And for some reason, the blue part would be willing to pay 53 for the wireless keyboard, while the green part, 92 on average. The hand blender, 30, 35. The leather gloves, 47 on average, and 75 on average. How the hell is this possible? The same question, the same people, on average, you're willing to pay nearly twice as much. And the answer lies in a principle called anchoring. Because just before asking you this question, I asked you another question which which is completely irrelevant for me. I mean, I don't care what you answer and how you answer. I asked you, would you be willing to pay 19 euros for each of these products? And you had to choose those objects for which you would be willing to pay 19. And I asked you guys, would you be willing to pay 97 euros for each of these items? And basically what I did was that I drew an anchor. And suddenly now, when you were thinking about the maximum that you would pay for the objects, you were not thinking, so how much is a hand blender worth? Or wireless keyboard worth? But you were thinking, is it more or is it less than 97? Well, it's probably a little bit less. So you start, subtracting from 97. And you guys, you did a different thing. So you thought, okay, so probably 19 for a wireless keyboard, that's too little. But how much more is an adequate price? And you started adding bit by bit. And those two numbers never came together. So you were drawn towards 97 and you were drawn towards 19. And that was the second question. Can you get it on? Okay, so we only have the first one. And can you get back my slides? And the second question was, imagine that you're buying a new laptop. And together with this laptop, we're selling a couple of accessories. There were 5 items. And again, one part, I asked, which of the accessories you want to buy together with the laptop? And the second part, I asked, which of the accessories you don't want to buy together with the laptop? So in a rational world, it's exactly the same question. You should end up with exactly the same package of accessories. Now, we do this experiment over and over again at conferences, at workshops, at presentations. And consistently, one of the two groups ends up with the package of accessories which is nearly twice as expensive as the other group. So which one do you think it is? The ones who had to choose which ones they want, or those who had to choose which ones they don't want? So who thinks it's those who basically crossed out those that they don't want? And you're right. Just asking the question in a little bit different way makes people choose differently. And this is the power of behavioral insights. If you know how people make decisions, if you know what's happening in our subconscious minds, well, you can become much more effective. You can become a much more effective communicator, marketer, salesperson, manager, whatever. Because everywhere where people make decisions and you need to change those decisions, then behavioral insights can be a huge help. So the main message from this presentation is that it won't be technology but psychology which will revolutionize business as we know it today. I know it's a little bit rude at a tech conference. And I'm not saying that technologies are not revolutionizing business, but the thing with technologies is that they come and go. Basically, every year there's a breakthrough technology. And it costs a lot of money to get on board with those technologies. But psychology and all these behavioral insights, once you understand them, you can use them for the rest of your life. Because it took evolution millions of years to basically build all the shortcuts that we were using when making decisions, and they won't change in a couple of years. And before I finish, I want to tell you one last thing about the project that we've been working on for the past year and a half. And it literally took thousands and thousands of hours. And if you remember this Dan Ariely guy who hooked me onto the topic, we actually worked on this project together with him and together with some other two huge minds from behavioral sciences. And what we put together is an online video course on behavioral economics and psychology in marketing. First time something like this was ever created, 7.5 hours of a video content and more than 350 pages of materials crafted just for the course. And actually, you are the first ones who get the chance to get the course, because we haven't even officially released it. We're doing it next week on Thursday, but it's already online. And since, well, I just thought that this conference might be a nice way to get the word out. So if you want to have a look, take a picture. It's mindworksacademy.com. And if you use the code REFLECT2019, you get 200 euros off the price of the course. So I encourage you to have a look. And I encourage you even more to come and talk to me if you think you might be interested to learn more, maybe get some suggestions on books or whatever on these topics. I'll be more than happy to talk to you. And one last thing, at 2:30, I have a workshop over there on the same topic. We'll have the chance to go a little bit deeper. I'll take you through a couple of behavioral principles, and we can talk about your business issues. So I see you there, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.